Ethan Harrison, the human recently inducted into the Galactic Confederation's peacekeeping force, leaned back in his chair with a grin that could only be described as triumphant. "You heard me, buddy," he said. "I want to sign up for the CIC Arena's next gladiatorial match, the big one with all the cheering crowds and deadly weapons." The crystalline body of Thyrix made a noise that resembled wind chimes caught in a hurricane as it tried to process this information. "But Ethan," it stammered, "those matches, they're not just for fun, they're ancient rituals of honor and bloodshed. Beings die in there." Ethan took a long swig from his mug, which held something unnervingly purple and possibly radioactive. "Sounds like a typical Tuesday back on Earth. Besides, I need the practice." The X's voice rose an octave, causing nearby patrons to wince and shield their ears. "Practice for what? Suicide?" Ethan's laughter boomed through the cantina, drawing the attention of various alien species. "Nah, man, I've got a big mission coming up next month. I have to infiltrate a Dravic pirate stronghold or something. Figured this would be a good warm-up." At this, Verozinth seriously reconsidered his life choices, especially the one that led him to become friends with this insane Deathworlder. "Ethan, my fragile friend, perhaps we should discuss this over a nice, calming game of hyper-chess instead?" But Ethan was already on his feet, stretching in a way that made several nearby aliens instinctively duck for cover. "Too late, Verozinth! I already signed up. The match is in an hour. You're coming to watch, right?" The Xerilith's crystalline body sagged in defeat. "I suppose someone needs to be there to collect your shattered remains." "That's the spirit!" Ethan slapped his friend on the back, nearly cracking his structure in the process. "Now let's go find me some proper gladiator gear. You think they'd let me use a chainsaw?" As Ethan sauntered out of the cantina, leaving a trail of bewildered and slightly terrified aliens behind him, Verozinth could only shake his head in resignation. He had a sinking feeling that today was going to be very long. The KC Arena was a marvel of alien architecture, a towering structure made of shimmering force fields and impossibly angled spires that defied the laws of physics. As Ethan and Verozinth approached the imposing entrance, the humans' excitement was almost palpable. "Would you look at that?" Ethan whistled appreciatively. "It's like the Roman Colosseum had a baby with a Tesla coil. Bet the acoustics in there are incredible." Verozinth, who had been quietly contemplating the eulogy he'd likely have to give at Ethan's funeral, snapped out of his daze. "Ethan, please, it's not too late to back out. We could go to the Galactic Zoo instead. I hear they've got a new exhibit on non-lethal flora from the Andromeda Galaxy." Ethan patted his friend's crystalline shoulder, being careful not to apply too much pressure this time. "Relax, buddy. I've got this. Besides, I promised Seraphine Malor I'd bring back a souvenir." Verozinth's ice dog swiveled in confusion. "A souvenir? From a gladiatorial deathmatch?" Ethan's grin turned mischievous. "Well, I was thinking maybe a tooth or a claw from whatever I'm fighting. You know, something to spruce up our living room." Before Verozinth could voice his horror at this idea, they were approached by a tall, willowy alien with skin that shimmered like oil on water. The being's voice was melodic but tinged with confusion as it spoke to Ethan. "Greetings, human. I am Seraphine Malor, Master of Ceremonies for the Elysian Arena. We received your application for today's match." The alien's iridescent eyes blinked rapidly. "I must confess, we were quite surprised. It's been centuries since a member of your species participated in our sacred rituals." Ethan bounced on the balls of his feet, looking like an eager puppy about to go for a walk. "Well, you know what they say. Be the change you want to see in the galaxy, and all that jazz. So what am I up against? Some kind of vicious space tiger, or maybe a giant carnivorous plant? I've always wanted to fight a Triffid." Seraphine Malor's composure faltered for a moment, revealing a mix of concern and fascination. "Actually, today's match is against a Thraxan berserker." Verozinth's entire body went pale, his usually vibrant crystal structure nearly transparent. "A Thraxan berserker?" he whispered. "But they're awesome." Ethan, completely misinterpreting his friend's terror, grinned widely. "I've heard about those guys. They're like, 9 feet tall with 4 arms and that wicked acid spit?" "7 arms," Seraphine Malor corrected softly. "And their blood is corrosive as well." Ethan's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Oh man, this is going to be great. Hey, quick question. Are we allowed to bring our own weapons, or is it more of a grab whatever you can in the arena kind of deal? Seraphine Malor seemed to regret every life choice that had led to this moment. Participants are allowed one personal weapon, but I must warn you, human, Ethan Harrison, the Thraxan Berserker is a formidable opponent. Many great warriors have fallen before its might. I'm sure it'll be fine, Ethan waved off the concern. I once wrestled an alligator for fun back on Earth. How much tougher could this be? As Seraphine Mailer led Ethan away to prepare for the match, Varo Zinth found himself wishing, not for the first time, that he had chosen a quieter career in quantum harmonics instead of joining the Galactic Confederation. At least then, he wouldn't have to watch his best friend get turned into human confetti by a seven-armed killing machine. With a resigned sigh, he followed. Varo Zinth made his way to the spectator stands, feeling more certain than ever that he was going to need some serious therapy after this. The arena was overflowing with aliens of every conceivable shape, size, and even state of matter. The atmosphere was electrifying, crackling with energy, and punctuated by the occasional static discharge from excited energy beings. Varo Zinth found himself squeezed between a gelatinous blob that was constantly oozing onto his seat and a tall, spindly creature whose 6 elbows seemed to appear everywhere at once. As he settled into what he was sure would be the most traumatizing sporting event of his life, he couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation. I can't believe a human entered the arena. Didn't their species just join the Confederation like a galactic minute ago? One voice said. I heard they come from a death world so brutal it makes Kronos look like a vacation destination. No way! I thought humans were those squishy pink things who faint at the sight of blood. Varo Zinth wanted to set the record straight. Humans were indeed squishy and pink, at least some of them, but they were also incredibly insane, with a bizarre habit of treating deadly situations as if they were at a theme park. Before he could correct them, however, the arena lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. Seraphine Malor's voice rang out across the stadium, magically amplified to reach every corner. Esteemed beings of the Galactic Confederation, welcome to the KX Arena, where legends are born and glory is written in stardust. The crowd erupted into a frenzy, a mixture of cheers, roars, and what sounded eerily like mocking calls from the Syndraxi section. Today, we have a most unusual match for you, Seraphine Malor continued, their voice a blend of excitement and what might have been existential dread. In one corner, standing a towering 3 meters tall with 7 arms of unimaginable strength and blood, capable of dissolving starship hulls, the undefeated champion from the radiation-soaked plains of Kronos. Korthak, the Annihilator. The far side of the arena opened, and out stepped a behemoth that looked like a nightmare incarnate. Korthak was a mountain of muscle, scales, and barely contained rage. Each of its 7 arms ended in claws that could probably serve as short-range spacecraft, and its mouth was lined with so many teeth that even a shark would feel self-conscious. The crowd's cheers reached a fevered pitch as Korthak let out a roar so powerful that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the arena. Several smaller aliens fainted on the spot, while others frantically typed away on their datapads to update their wills. Varo Zinth felt his crystalline body vibrate with dread. If this is Korthak, they wouldn't really let Ethan. And in the other corner, Seraphine Malor's voice broke through the chaos, now tinged with disbelief. Standing at a mere 1.8 meters with only 2 arms and skin so delicate it bruises if you look at it too hard, a newcomer from the mysterious death world known as Earth, Ethan Harrison. The opposite gate opened, and out strolled Ethan, looking as if he were heading to a casual picnic rather than a life-or-death fight. He was wearing what appeared to be standard Galactic Confederation peacekeeping armor, but somehow he'd embellished it with glitter. Were those googly eyes on the shoulders? In his hands, Ethan held what looked like a heavily modified leaf blower. He waved cheerfully at the crowd, then turned to Korthak and gave a casual nod. Hey, big guy, I'm really digging the whole multi-arm Harbinger of Doom vibe you've got going on. Very stylish. The stadium fell so silent you could hear a pin drop, or, in this case, the sound of several thousand alien jaws hitting the floor. Korthak, clearly not accustomed to such a nonchalant attitude from its prey, let out another earth-shattering roar. Acidic spittle flew from its mouth, sizzling as it splashed onto the arena floor. Ethan's response was to pull out a pair of sunglasses from seemingly nowhere and put them on with exaggerated flair. Ooh, spicy. I like it. In the stands, Varo Zinth was genuinely contemplating whether a Vorlok could die from second-hand embarrassment. He watched, horrified, as his human friend squared off against a creature that made Earth's most terrifying predators look like harmless pets. Seraphine Maller's voice, now strained with a mix of professionalism and genuine concern, rang out once more. Competitors, remember the sacred rules of combat. The match ends when one fighter yields or is no longer capable of continuing. May the stars guide your fates. Let the battle commence. The moment the words left Seraphine Mallore's mouth, Korthak charged forward like an enraged rhinoceros shot out of a cannon. Its 7 arms whirled in a deadly frenzy, claws flashing under the arena lights. Ethan, showing an appalling lack of self-preservation, stood his ground. Just as Korthak was about to flatten him into a red stain on the arena floor, the human activated his bizarre weapon. The modified leaf blower roared to life, spewing a cloud of glitter into the air. The arena quickly filled with a sparkling storm of tiny reflective particles. Korthak, completely thrown off by this unconventional attack, skidded to a halt, its 14 eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. "What's the matter, big guy?" Ethan's voice called out from somewhere in the glittery haze. "Not a fan of arts and crafts?" Korthak's response was a furious roar as it began wildly swinging its arms, desperately trying to land a blow on the elusive human, but Ethan, defying all expectations, ducked and weaved effortlessly through the flurry of flailing limbs. The crowd sat in stunned silence. This was not the gladiatorial combat they had come to see. Where was the blood, the gore, the tragic yet heroic last stands? Varo Zinth, for his part, was torn between covering his eyes and not blinking at all, afraid to miss what could be his friend's final moments. "By the crystal caves of Vorlok's prime," he muttered under his breath. "I can't believe I'm watching my best friend face off against a creature that eats black holes for breakfast. And he's winning." Indeed, Ethan seemed to be holding his own. Every time Korthak's enormous claws came close, Ethan would either roll, jump, or, on one especially flashy occasion, backflip out of harm's way. Meanwhile, he kept up a steady stream of chatter, no doubt driving the Thraxan berserker into an ever-deepening frenzy. "You know," Ethan called out, ducking under a swipe that would have easily decapitated him, "I had a cat back on Earth that fought just like you. Of course, Mr. Whiskers was only about a year old and had 4 legs, but the resemblance is uncanny." Korthak let out a bellow of fury, its frustration mounting. It wasn't accustomed to prey that not only didn't run, but actually talked back, let alone a prey that seemed to treat a life-and-death battle as if it were some twisted dance party. Sensing an opportunity, Ethan took the offensive. He charged forward, sliding between Korthak's massive legs like a baseball player stealing home. As he passed under the berserker, Ethan reached up and tickled it. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Korthak let out a sound akin to a squeal, leaping a good meter into the air. The ground trembled as it landed, knocking several spectators from their seats. "Ticklish, huh?" Ethan's grin was so wide it could be heard even through the glitter cloud that had formed. "Guess even the big, bad berserkers have their weak spots." Meanwhile, in the commentator's box, Seraphine Malore seemed to be on the verge of a complete breakdown. Their voice, once melodic, now cracked as they struggled to narrate this most bizarre of battles. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender, I'm at a loss for words. The human appears to be employing some sort of guerrilla tickle warfare down in the arena. The battle continued to unfold in increasingly strange ways. Realizing his glitter attack had turned Korthak's scales into a shimmering disco ball, Ethan decided to make the most of this unexpected turn of events. "Hey, Korthak, buddy," he called out, dodging yet another wild swipe. "Has anyone ever told you that you've got serious potential as a dance floor sensation? I mean, with all those arms, you could tear up the club scene." To prove his point, Ethan began to dance. His movements were an odd combination of jerky, robotic motions, epileptic seizures, and what could only be described as an interpretive dance based on the mating rituals of the Vrolthor slug people. The crowd, which had previously been mesmerized by the chaos unfolding in the arena, now exploded into a chaotic mix of laughter, cheers, and confused screaming. Several beings, clearly caught up in the moment, began mimicking Ethan's wild dance moves, causing a wave of erratic motion to ripple through the stands. Korthak, for its part, seemed utterly confused. Its attacks grew more erratic and frantic, as if it couldn't quite process what it was seeing. Here was prey that not only refused to die, but appeared to be enjoying itself immensely. Varozinth, watching from his seat with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration, wondered if he had seriously underestimated his human friend. Or maybe, he thought, as he watched Ethan narrowly dodge yet another claw strike, humans were just collectively insane. Down in the arena, Ethan was starting to show signs of exhaustion. His impressive agility was beginning to slow. Sweat streamed down his face, mixing with the glitter to create a bizarre, shimmering war paint effect. "All right, big guy," Ethan panted, narrowly dodging a swipe that could have cleaved him in half. "I think it's time we wrap this up. I've got a date with a cold shower and about 16 cheeseburgers after this." With a move that defied the laws of physics, Ethan suddenly sprinted directly at Korthak. The crowd gasped collectively, certain they were about to witness the human's messy demise. But Ethan, displaying that uniquely human blend of reckless determination and brilliant ingenuity, had one last trick up his sleeve. As he reached Korthak, Ethan activated his leaf blower once again. But this time, instead of glitter, it released a torrent of what looked suspiciously like shaving cream. Varozinth muttered in disbelief. "Is that?" The arena floor quickly became covered in a thick, foamy layer of white. Korthak, caught completely off guard, lost its footing. Its 7 arms windmilled in a comically frantic attempt to regain balance as the massive creature struggled on the slippery surface. Ethan, seemingly unaffected by the slippery conditions, he would later credit years of practice running on ice to catch the school bus, circled behind Korthak. With a triumphant whoop, he launched himself onto the berserker's back. "Yee-haw, cowboy!" Ethan shouted, clinging to Korthak's thrashing form like a rodeo star on the angriest mechanical bull in the galaxy. The crowd went absolutely wild. Aliens who had never heard of cowboys or rodeos found themselves inexplicably shouting, "Yee-haw!" Betting pools that initially had Ethan at odds of 10,000 to 1 were rapidly being recalculated. Korthak, now in full panic mode, spun and bucked, trying to shake off the human clinging to its back. But Ethan held on with grim determination, one hand gripping the berserker's scaly hide, the other still wielding his leaf blower, now functioning as a foam cannon. "You know," Ethan called out conversationally, as though he wasn't currently riding a homicidal alien monster, "I'm starting to think you might have some anger management issues. Have you tried meditation?" "I hear it does wonders for stress," Ethan said with a grin, his words dripping with sarcasm as Korthak let out another roar of pure frustration. The berserker spun harder, faster, its massive body twirling like a 7-armed top on a rampage. That's when Ethan saw his chance. With the kind of timing that would have made an action movie director proud, Ethan launched himself off Korthak's back just as the berserker's spin hit its peak. Unable to halt its momentum, Korthak slid across the foam-slicked arena floor like an out-of-control hockey puck. The entire crowd held its breath, watching as the creature's unstoppable trajectory continued, and then, boom! A thunderous crash shook the stadium as Korthak slammed headfirst into the arena wall. The impact was so violent that Varozinth braced himself, sure the whole structure might collapse. Cracks raced across the reinforced barrier, and a cloud of dust enveloped the area. As it cleared, all eyes turned toward the crumpled form of Korthak. The mighty berserker lay still, its 7 arms sprawled out at odd angles. A soft groan came from the creature's direction, but it remained unmoving, and there, standing triumphantly atop the fallen giant like a hero on a pedestal, was Ethan. His armor was battered, his hair was a sticky mess of sweat and glitter, and he was completely covered in shaving cream. But through all that, he wore a grin that could rival the sun. "So, Ethan called out, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Does this mean I win? Because honestly, that was one hell of a workout. For a long, seemingly endless moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire stadium was collectively trying to process the unbelievable spectacle they had just witnessed. Then, like the breaking of a dam, the crowd erupted into madness. Cheers, screams, and incomprehensible alien sounds filled the air as beings of every kind leapt to their feet, or whatever appendages they had, swept up in the electric excitement of Ethan's victory. In the commentator's booth, Seraphine Mallour seemed to be having some sort of spiritual awakening. Their voice, when it finally broke through the chaos, was filled with awe. Incredible! Unbelievable! In all my years, I have never ladies, gentlemen, and beings of non-binary designation. We have just witnessed history. Ethan Harrison, the human from Earth, has defeated Grogar the Annihilator. Down in the arena, medical teams approached Grogar's fallen form cautiously. The Berserker was still breathing, but it was clear it would be a while before it was annihilating anything more dangerous than soup. Ethan, for his part, was remarkably unfazed by the ordeal. He was busy attempting to scrape glitter off his armor while occasionally waving at the cheering crowd. Varro Zinth, jostled by excited aliens eager to touch the friend of the victor, was still trying to wrap his mind around what he'd just seen. Part of him wondered if he'd somehow ingested some hallucinogenic spores before the match. There was no other explanation for the sheer insanity of it all. As Ethan was escorted from the arena, waving and blowing kisses as though he had just won a beauty pageant, Varro Zinth managed to shake off his dazed state. He hurried to meet his friend, equal parts relieved, amazed, and utterly terrified by what Ethan might consider his next challenge. He found Ethan in the competitor's prep area, surrounded by medics who seemed more bewildered than concerned. Ethan's face lit up when he saw Varro Zinth. "Varro Zinth, buddy, did you see that? What a rush!" Ethan practically bounced with the excess adrenaline. "I think I've found my new favorite sport." Varro Zinth's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been the quartan equivalent of a long-suffering sigh. "Ethan, my fragile, apparently indestructible friend, we need to have a serious talk about your definition of fun." Ethan laughed and clapped Varro Zinth on the back, nearly shattering him in the process. "Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. Besides, think about the stories we'll tell at the next Galactic Confederation mixer." Before Varro Zinth could formulate an appropriate response that conveyed his mix of relief, exasperation, and lingering terror, they were interrupted by Seraphine Mallour. The master of ceremonies, looking like they had aged several years in the span of the match, stepped up to them. "Mr. Harrison," Seraphine Mallour began, their melodious voice now thick with a mix of respect and disbelief. "On behalf of the KX Arena, I must extend our congratulations on your unprecedented victory." Ethan beamed. "Thanks! It was a blast! Hey, quick question, do you guys do punch cards? Fight 10 berserkers, get the 11th one free?" Seraphine Mallour's iridescent eyes blinked rapidly, clearly trying to process this absurd request. We don't typically." They trailed off, at a total loss for words. Varro Zinth, sensing that Ethan was about to talk himself into more trouble, quickly stepped in. "What my esteemed, though clearly concussed, companion means to say is, thank you for the opportunity. We'll be on our way now. Come along, Ethan. I believe you mentioned something about cheeseburgers." As Varro Zinth dragged Ethan toward the exit, Seraphine Mallour called after them. "Mr. Harrison, one last thing. As victor, you're entitled to claim a trophy from your defeated opponent. Would you like us to remove one of Korthak's claws? Or perhaps a tooth?" Ethan paused, as if considering the offer. Varro Zinth feared he might actually take them up on the offer, but then a devilish grin spread across Ethan's face. "You know what? I've got a much better idea," he said. "How about you guys snap a picture of Korthak all glittered up and covered in shaving cream? Now that would make a much cooler souvenir." With that, Ethan casually strolled out of the arena, leaving a stunned trail of bewildered aliens and completely shattered ideas about the nature of combat, bravery, and the unconventional use of cosmetic products in gladiatorial settings. Varro Zinth, struggling to keep pace with his friend's long strides, found himself shaking his head in a mixture of exasperation and reluctant admiration. "I suppose I should be thankful you didn't challenge the entire Thraxon Berserker squad to a rematch," he muttered under his breath. Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh, now that's an idea. You think they'd be up for a tag team match? We could totally take them on together. You with your crystal powers and me with my leaf blower of doom." As Ethan continued to rattle off increasingly ridiculous battle scenarios, Varo Zinth had an epiphany. First, he realized he was going to need to track down a therapist who specialized in dealing with the friends of adrenaline junkie deathworlders. Second, he realized that life with Ethan Harrison was going to be many things, but boring was certainly not one of them. All right, Varo Zinth said, trying to steer Ethan in a different direction. "Let's get those cheeseburgers before you end up challenging a black hole to a staring contest." Ethan's laugh boomed as he slung an arm around Varo Zinth's crystalline shoulders. "Varo Zinth, my man, that's why you're the brains of this operation. Speaking of operations, though, did I ever tell you about the time I had to perform an emergency appendectomy on myself with nothing but a rusty spoon and some hot sauce?" As Ethan launched into yet another improbable, wildly dangerous story, Varo Zinth couldn't help but wonder, once again, if humans were truly the most terrifying species in the galaxy, not because of their strength, their tech, or their cunning, but because of their almost unbelievable ability to turn mortal danger into an entertaining pastime. And as they made their way through the alien city's bustling streets, leaving a trail of glitter and a stream of confused onlookers in their wake, Varo Zinth found himself feeling an unexpected sense of pride. After all, how many beings could say they were best friends with a human who had the audacity to use a leaf blower in a gladiatorial match, and walk away the victor? The galaxy, Varo Zinth decided, was in serious trouble. If this was Ethan Harrison's idea of a warm-up, he couldn't wait to see what the human would do when he was really trying. On second thought, maybe he could wait from a very safe distance, preferably with a good medical plan and lots of insurance.